Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the January 23rd work session from Polk County School Board. Thank you for being here. We'll open the meeting with comments from board members. Yes.
Okay,
Ms. Hill?
I went to Tallahassee, like I told you. I was there Tuesday, met with lots of our legislators, had really good conversations. It's more like planting seeds, but we really talked about our turnaround schools and the effort that the teachers are making, and sometimes how the test scores don't show the effort and the abilities of teachers when they're working in schools with high poverty and struggling. And I know you know that from visiting your turnaround schools. And I didn't have any arguments about that. I was surprised. It may take some time. Representative Albritton has a bill. He's supporting the bill that he took up the bill that Neil Cumby first supported about not letting the VAM scores determine the teachers, whether they stay or removed from turnaround schools. Don't know, very political climate right now, don't know if it can go through, but he's pledged that he will continue to support that bill for us. We had another long, interesting talk, and this is something on us. Ben Albritton talked about the interest of career education in schools, and it was clear that he has no idea, and I blame that on us, that we're not only leaders in the state, but we have people from all over the nation coming and looking at the hard work and excellent academies that we have. So, this is an opportunity. He has agreed. I invited him, along with all board members, and maybe some, and if we can get other legislators. I talked with Mrs. Bird about this morning, to have a tour so that he can see, bring other people on that tour, people from Polk State that have partnered with us for years, and let him see the excellent work. The bad thing about getting that C is that from far off, people think we're a mediocre district. So we're going to, after session, he is anxious to see our efforts. And so after session, we're going to, he wants to do it, give him a tour, but we'd really like this a tour for all people that somehow we've let them miss the knowledge of what we're doing here in this district that is really at national excellence level. So he's anxious to see what we've been doing, and he's very supportive because he has bought into the fact that we need to be doing career academies, and he's going to be very surprised that we're one of the leaders, not only in the state but the nation. So Dr. Hutek, I know Mrs. Bird will be talking with you to, and we even mentioned maybe Mr. Small could come back because he could give the history, and then the vision that you have to take this forward is, to me, the most innovative thinking that I've seen in a long time. So Wendy and I had a good visit. We had 6. It was a busy day on Tuesday, and then I drove home. But I feel encouraged. Sometimes we have to realize we just can plant seeds. We can't at one time make huge changes, but I definitely felt like everybody listened, and I also felt like they understood because I didn't get a debate back. So for me, it was a good visit, although I know we might not see results this year. But I was very heartened that he said he would keep on with that bill next year. He plans to be in the Senate, and that he would do that. So it was a good visit.
Yeah.
And some of us will be going in February. I know Mrs. Cunningham's going, I don't know, and I know Mr. Harris will be there.
I'm not able to go. My mom's having surgery that week, but make sure you tell all my friends hi.
We'll send your regards. How's that?
I always relish the chance to talk to them. I will miss that opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you, Mrs. Sellers. It's very, very thorough report. Appreciate that. And I too have met with Mr. Albritton, and he's very much interested in working with us to solve some of our problems here. So we just have to, we as a board have been sending that message, and I think they're starting to hear it. So that's encouraging.
One quick thing, it's sort of along those lines. I think this is worth taking a look at, the middle school study that I think Kelly Stargell ordered or guided. I don't remember how it got created, but there was a study of 5 or 6 states that apparently do middle schools better than Florida. Florida is out. It's on the DOE website. You won't be surprised by it. They have more resources, the conclusions are pretty clear. DOE, as I understand it, wasn't terribly thrilled about posting the study out, but I'll send it to Susan so you guys can take a look at it. I mean, I think it's just more evidence of the changes that are needed in the overall Florida model.
Any other comments? Some time ago, we had a discussion about proclamations and maybe considering a policy similar to the Board of County Commissioners. Mrs. Sellers had asked to see some proclamations from it was Mrs. Fields who asked to see some proclamations from, some other policies from some other school districts. And so I asked the Superintendent Byrd if she might be willing to help pull some of those together. And
I reached out to Wendy, and I know she's a little
Okay.
busy right now, but she's
Sure.
gonna reach out and try to grab some policies from other
So-
districts.
very good. So at some point in time, we have those. I'd like to bring those forward and continue that discussion. I think they've crafted a policy that works well for them, and I think would work well for us as well. So those are coming down the road. Ms. Reynolds, did you have any other comments from the board before we move on? Okay, or any comments? Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is district-managed charter schools. Where did this start? A few years ago, over the past couple years, I've been approached by a number of folks from our business community, developers, builders, and there's some concern about concurrency and issuing concurrency certificates and ultimately slowing down growth in the county through moratoriums, much concern about that. And so there have been a number of meetings over the past couple of years. They've included Superintendent Byrd and myself, some of our business community, developers, builders, things of that nature. We've had members of the Board of County Commissioner, including Commissioner George Lindsay, and we've come up with, well, I say we, they, working together, have really come up with at least a temporary solution. Much thanks goes to Ms. Usher because she's been absolutely integral in that. And I'm hoping maybe we could, if it's okay with you, have her give us a little, not today, but in a future work session, a little bit of, tell us what's happening. In fact, they were pleased enough with the progress that the Board of County Commissioners, that is, that they opted not for a joint meeting this year because they felt like we were in a good place. So, but along the way, we did hear from some folks from neighboring communities about district-managed charters, and from a growth perspective, how they could be helpful. We all know that the state provides for some special types of funding for those types of, for charter schools in general, and it's been very helpful for some districts as it relates to district-managed charters. Mr. Bridges sent this information out, so I wanted to bring this forward and just open up a discussion. I know Superintendent Byrd has some thoughts about it from an academic perspective, but just again wanted us to, as a board, to kind of talk about this and see if it might be something would be interested in, maybe having some folks come and talk to us about it. Superintendent Byrd?
I just want to make sure the public understands, this is the conversation that the chair is actually asking the board to comment on is for future use. It's not for schools that are withstanding right now. I want to be very clear about that. And this is not about school grade, it's about more of the capacity issues that we're having within our district and how do we help resolve some of those. So I know that several years ago, prior to me, I believe that discussion came about charters. And so I just want to make sure the public is very well aware, it's not dealing with where we are today, it's future, looking at it in the future, as well as looking at how do we help the areas that we have the need for seats and help in that manner.
Exactly. Ms. Cunningham?
Yeah, I was just gonna comment, I had a conversation, about this very topic with, two, maybe three superintendents ago, regarding the feasibility of doing something like this. As I always say, in order to play the game, you have to know the rules of the game. And as we are currently moving forward, through our legislators, continuing to fund charter schools and making them more attractive in the state of Florida, it would seem to me it would behoove us to look into doing just that. Because I think once you play by the same rules, you're able to accomplish a whole lot more. So I don't know what the answer is overall, because obviously we've never really looked at the feasibility, the costs associated with it, and all the different pieces, but you know, from 30,000 feet, it would seem to me that that's definitely something that we need to explore. So I would be in favor of bringing folks in to discuss how that would work, what it would take, things like that, and financially, the impact to the school district, which I think would be quite favorable, considering the mandates and things that public schools get that our charters don't. And I am, you know, pro-charter in general, because I feel like students need to have choice. So if we can somehow manage that within our own district, it really behooves us to look into it. Thank you.
Mr. Townsend,
Do
did
you
you
wanna
have
go?
comments?
Is this the same, I know, I understand the difference because this is to solve a growth issue. But when we talk about district managed charters, is it the same option that they're giving us for our turnaround schools? It's,
No.
they're two different animals,
Mhm.
that, even though they are called district managed charters.
Mhm.
That's what I was picking up from
Right.
you, and I wanted
Right.
to be sure. They're so if we hear about this, this won't tell us what this district managed charter school will be like for our turnaround schools.
That's right. When the chair approached this conversation, it was more about how do we alleviate some of the areas where we're seeing the growth. It was not about dealing with the issues of the lower performing schools. It was more so the growth areas is what we're looking at.
Sir.
A few things. The first, just I'm not afraid to have any discussion. I'm interested in exploring everything. So that is. But what does this? So what we're trying to get at here is we could build a school that wasn't up to, say, hurricane standards or like build under the same standards that charters build under. Is that what the benefit is?
We could get money from
I think it's
the
just getting
state to
money that we
build.
don't currently have.
Right,
Okay,
that we
so
can't
just
get
need
as a
help, yeah.
traditional school.
So we just pretend to be. Well, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm happy to I'm happy to have that. I'm happy to have that
Would you like to-
discussion.
Okay.
To some extent, I did think it was going to dovetail into the district managed charter issue that Hazel just raised, and I just want to say, I probably would have raised this in my own part, but I think Wes sent out the piece, and I'd seen this before. He sent it out that they're now talking about a fourth option, and I have a fifth option, but we'll discuss that at a different time. I guess I have a question about that. If we make a decision on any of those schools, is that decision going to be brought before the board, or are you going to make that and move forward? Yeah, I mean, or I guess to be as direct as I can, am I going to get a chance to vote on that?
The six, you talking about for the 6 schools with the external offer?
Yeah.
Yes.
If we have to make a choice
Yes.
on
I would tell you that we're vetting. We had a company come in yesterday, which was the current one we had before the team. We had one more, I think, Thursday morning. And then what the team is going to do is make recommendations to bring those to the board for your vote regarding the external operators on that. Quite naturally, one of the things that the team and I were looking at, when these schools make the grade of the C, are they relinquished back to the district? We've actually looked at one of the companies that was, and I'll just tell you right now, was charging $1 million per school starting out and was not willing to relinquish back to the district and wanted a 5-year contract. So those are the things we're looking at very carefully. But yes, you will be voting on it, and we'll be bringing you a recommendation.
Will we be voting on that in advance of what actually occurs with the schools, or after the schools are? I mean,
So the way the language reads with the state is that they had a recommended date of January 31st, recommended. We're still vetting because we want to make sure that we look at the company. So we'll be bringing something forward next month at the board meeting for you to make a recommendation on. Quite naturally, that is going to be before the school grades even come out. As superintendents, we did push back and say, why are we doing this now? Why can't we be in a planning stage and we're making this decision prior to school grades coming out? Which was the basis for the flexibility that we wanted with a vendor. When you're looking at a vendor, you want that flexibility when the school grade does come out to a seal. We still, connected to this contract fully.
Well, I gotta say, and I understand your position. You have to do what you have to do. I'm gonna vote against anything that involves us doing any of those three choices, and I'm just gonna fight it. And I hope Eric, remember, these are the Kelly Stargell school threat closures, okay? I just want everybody to know that there's not a single choice I'm gonna vote for it, but it doesn't reflect badly on you. I understand that you've gotta do what you gotta do. So that being said, if there's real interest down the line in legitimate, we have to build real good faith partnerships with not just charter schools. I mean, the way I always phrase this is between the traditional zone schools and the non-traditional zone schools. I'm interested in exploring as many possible partnerships as we can between those layers of schools that are based on good faith and common purpose. And I'm happy to have discussions about that and look forward to asking questions about it. So those are two distinct things from my point of view. I just want to make sure of that. And I guess the third point, when we were going through the McLaughlin-Bach issue last year, from my point of view, there was always an outcome that I wanted. I wanted these set of circumstances. If we were able to produce this set of circumstances, I would be interested in this plan. What happened was, let's do this plan and trust us, you'll get the circumstances, and I'm not ever going to support that. I want us to start with the outcome and work backwards on any of these partnerships, and I think there's a lot of potential for a lot of them as we move forward. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as a generalized bit of thinking, and I'm happy to have this discussion. I won't commit to anything, but I'm happy to have any kind of discussion.
Right, and it's just a discussion, just
Yeah,
a
good.
session for us to talk.
I'm done.
Ms. Cunningham?
One question. So when we're presented with the information and the options, the three,
External.
possibly four, right? My question is anyone else in the state saying there's an option 4 or 5 that we're not gonna do it? Any of the above? Is there anyone, I just have to ask?
Well, superintendents, we had to select the option which we're going to choose. At the time, there was
I
only
understand.
3 on the table, and we
Right.
selected the external. That's the one I
Yes.
called back the
Okay.
external. Most of them have actually gone out with the external. I
Okay.
do know there's some waivers that just happened at the last state board meeting, which we were all told that no waivers were going to be granted, but 5 districts have actually presented. I just had a conversation not too long ago with some partners in DoE about that, because we were all told, they were not going to grant any waivers for an additional year of district managed turnaround.
Right, particularly if you can already see growth happening, so that, okay.
We were basically told no. 5 presented last Tuesday, and all 5 were granted with a waiver. So, right now, there were only 3. The 4th option is actually in play. I don't think it's been
Right.
finally approved. The 4th option that they're now putting out there is a principal could still be the principal in the building and run a group of schools. A high-performing principal. But that's the one that they just put out there, like last week, I think.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're calling it a franchise.
Yeah.
So you could have Highlands Grove. Say Ben Henry could run 6
high-performing
schools
principal.
in theory.
And still run
In
their.
theory,
In theory,
that was a strike all amendment, because obviously they've thought this through so
Right.
well.
Right,
The 5th option is mine, which is
Don't.
pound sand.
Right,
We're not gonna
exactly,
do
don't
anything
do
you
it.
tell us to do, come and do something.
So that's my
about it.
question, is anybody out there that you're hearing saying, look, we are not gonna do any of these options because it makes no sense for our school district?
None of the superintendents that I know, none of the superintendents have selected, they're not gonna do anything.
Okay, I just had to ask.
That's probably an elected official question.
Well,
They have
I
professional
understand,
responsibilities.
but are you hearing that other districts may push back?
I have not.
You are not, okay.
I have not.
So I'd like to, I'd like to
Presents with me.
have Mr. Bridges comment on this in a moment, but from my perspective, bringing it forward really is ensuring that as our community grows, and it is, it's gonna grow,
Right.
that we have seats for students,
That's right.
and we're taking care of our students as best we can. So that really was the idea here, and as I understand it, and again, I'll ask Mr. Bridges to weigh in just a moment here, as I understand it, the district managed charters are just that, they're still managed by the district, so we don't have a separate board running them and so forth. In addition to that, and Superintendent Byrd and I have had a number of conversations about this, and I'm gonna ask her to elaborate just a little bit more. One of the options was bringing in an outside company to manage the school until it got to a certain level, with the idea that they would then turn that school back over to us. Is that correct?
Right, as you're looking at the, dealing with the lower performing turnaround schools, that was one of the options of an external operator, where that person comes in and it handles, just what it says, the operations of the school. And there are companies that want a 3-5 year contract, and then if that school makes the C grade, superintendents are asking, are those schools coming back to where schools assume full responsibility? Basically, the external operator will have, the day-to-day operations of, selecting teachers, releasing principals and all of that. So you wanna look at someone that, one, has the flexibility of having a collaboration with the district as an external operator, in that manner. And then are they willing, once that school makes the C grade, are they willing to relinquish back? DOE says once they make the grade of a C, we still want you to have them as a partner with a lower level of service to build sustainability, that school continue moving forward, is what they are looking for. So let me say that there are really no true external operators, true ones that DOE could give us a list of. Most superintendents, if they had a AMO that was currently working in their district, they're looking at those AMOs right now. There are people that are popping up saying that they're external operators that are, basically professional development companies right now. And they're charging a pretty hefty price tag. But are they truly the external operator that's going to help you move your district forward and work with the district, dealing with everything that we have to deal with? So we have one more company to vet that we're going to look at, and then we'll bring those recommendations forward based on what we want for our district, for Polk County.
Thank you. Ms. Sellers?
So our waivers, is there still time to apply for a waiver?
I did have a conversation earlier, and got some guidance of how they get there last week. What do they look at? What is the state board looking at, as far as that? I'm gonna go back and vet those 6 schools very carefully to see if any of them are gonna, fit into that. And then I would have to go up and present to the state board at that time for those schools. Truly, it's up to the state board's hand whether they approve them or deny it.
Ms. Reynolds?
Is the high-performing principals that you were talking about, is that the SB 1684, or is that
I believe that
DOE's
is, yeah.
also presented it? It's still legislation is what you were
Mhm,
talking
yeah.
about?
Right,
Okay.
it's legislation.
Mr. Bridges, would you mind weighing in on the district managed charter school issue?
This is a concept that is not new. It has been around for some time. Our district had a lead in investigating this 3 administrations ago, I think. We've actually done one version of it. There was a time 10 or 12 years ago when we started, I believe, 4 charter schools within a school, district managed. They were for dropout retrieval purposes, and it worked like a charm until the State Board of Education saw what we were doing and said, no, you can't turn around schools that way, and took away the school, the MSID numbers. And I think at that point they sort of mostly folded their tents and went away. I think we have one one charter school left that started that way and has morphed into something else, and that's Compass. But it is something that we determined could be, there's nothing that in the law or the regs that prohibits it from happening. That does not mean if you have a good idea that, or an idea that you like, that the state board doesn't like, that they won't turn around and put a barrier in front of it. I don't know. It is, that was the experience that we had before. I know that in Volusia County, they're in the process, if they haven't already, they were in the process of adopting a policy to allow it. I think there's also a bit of the old metaphor with the six blind men and the elephant. When different people look at the concept of district managed charter schools, they see different things. And we would need to be careful what it is, make sure that we all have the same picture in front of us as we proceeded. One thing that I would point out is that at the time that we did this several years ago, I think there was a much broader gulf in the standards and regulations that were applicable to charter schools as opposed to regular public schools. That has narrowed. In 1996, when Lawton Childs signed the charter bill, this is something that I have conversations with Mr. Tedder at the tax collector's office from time to time. He was involved in writing that, and he comes and says, what we have now doesn't look like what we had then. It was designed to allow them to be sort of wide open and have flexibility and freedom in the regulatory environment. And as we have gone on each year, I think we have seen the greater and greater applicability of the statute, of the school code to charter schools, greater and greater regulation of the charter schools. There are still some significant differences, but they no longer have the freedoms relative to public schools that they used to have. I will tell you that if we get in the business of district managed charter schools, Mr. Townsend, I think you asked the question up front, having to do with construction, I do not believe that if a public school district was to get into the business of district operated charter schools, that they would be relieved from complying with all applicable building codes that apply to regular public schools. That would require an act of the legislature to change. So I think if you were in the business of building and operating charter schools, you're still going to be subject to SREF. I know Ms. Usher is here, and she may have some insight from her colleagues throughout the state. But I don't think you would have relief when it comes to construction and compliance requirements there. But it is certainly, like I said, it's not a new idea, but there are new permutations on it that are being brought forward, and whether it has to do with once again increasing student stations and capacity, whether it has to do with dropout retrieval, whether it has to do with turnaround, those are very different paradigms that would need to be considered in that vein. And I would also mention that the story that broke yesterday, having to do with the quote franchise schools within districts, does not use the word charter school. Mm-hmm. That is not a charter school concept. That is a concept that simply allows a principal that is designated as being particularly high performing to have oversight and turn around schools that are not doing so well. And we don't know what, that may also be subject to a variety of models. The one that immediately pops into mind is that you get some kind of a super principal that has a number of principals under their supervision and control. So it may be something like that, but that particular statute is not a charter school concept. It is not a charter school term.
Right, okay.
Does that sort of touch the basis?
Yes, it
For
does.
today?
And again, just to be clear, from my perspective, it's the ability to obtain funding that we don't currently have access to.
Exactly.
More than
Funding,
anything else.
not the-
So, and again, we'll look forward to having a presentation. Superintendent Byrd can help out with that. And so what I'll do is I'll work with the superintendent to see if we can bring some folks forward to kind of talk to us. We can have the discussion.
one last thing?
Sure.
I mean, I think, I'm all for that, by all means do it. I think when you hear Wes talk, and you hear all of us talk, how unsettled everything is.
Yeah.
Public opinion is turning pretty hard against 76-9, I think, whether they can withstand that, and, you know, who knows. But what is the law? I mean, it's kind of what you can get away with right now, and I think we're in a period of time when the lawsuits play out, and we need to be really careful about setting precedents in this time that blow us up 5 years from now. You know, I mean, let's just think about the long-term ramifications of this and start with what the outcome we want is, and build backward from that. That's all in the course of discussing this.
And one last thing that I would touch on is, I don't know where this concept of waivers came from. I don't recall seeing it in the law, or regulations. It may have been the good idea of somebody, in an executive position who looked at it and said, well, maybe we can do this. And I guess there's nothing that says you can't, but there's nothing when Mrs. Sellers asked the question about, is it too late to apply? My first question is, apply for what? And my second question is, under what deadline?
Yeah.
Because I'm not familiar with any statute or regulation that creates that,
Right.
makes it available, or sets forth any process to request it or acquire it.
So,
Oh, I was just gonna say, but since people have applied for them and they've
Right.
been approved,
Right.
does that not open the door for us?
Yes, it
to do the
does.
same?
Absolutely.
so my conversation today was, about the deadline and how long is that waiver actually? And actually what I was told, that will only be for the end of this year, and then if there's no improvement, you're back in the same spot of applying and reviewing for an external come January of 2019.
Did anybody
Oh.
tell you, is there an application process?
No, I think you just write a letter and ask that you, want to appear before the board to see if they will approve it.
A whole lot can happen between now and January 2019.
Absolutely.
Is all I'm saying.
Well, that's what external, for the waiver, that's talking about right now, that you have to go before the state board to see if they'll give you.
No, I mean, right, no, I get it.
If you
If
don't.
it gets us through, you know, we're
Yes. Yeah.
back in this boat in
Yeah.
2019,
Okay.
it may be with very different players. And, you know, that's,
I think Mrs. Cunningham had a
Well, I
comment.
was just gonna say, would there be any way to contact the folks, one of the folks, whoever you might be most comfortable with, that did apply and received the waiver, to say, I mean, not getting in too much of the mud, but how did you find out? What prompted you to do it? I mean,
I've been in conversations
You
with
have?
several of them, yes.
so is that something you're considering?
We're gonna look at the data. I just met with, some of the team this morning to say we're gonna pull the data on the school. Basically some of the stuff that they told me, how they reviewed it, we're currently reviewing and looking at our data now just to see
If we might,
if we
okay.
may be able to apply for
Okay.
any of the 6. Any of them.
So it's not an all or nothing, you would apply but for individual
You have
schools?
to pick, you can do
Oh.
all, you can do individual.
I see, okay.
Okay. Any other comments related to district-managed charters? All right, so the next item on our agenda is the School Board Services Direct Employees Contract discussion. As I indicated earlier, I want to keep this on the agenda just so that, you know, we don't lose track of it. I've asked Mr. Bridges and Mrs. Matthews to see if they could find some contracts, and
We are in that process. We have a number, and there are probably some more to come in.
okay,
We'll try to have those copied and tabbed out for you for the next work session.
okay, very good. And I, as I understand it, in talking with Mrs. Matthews, it's a little more difficult as it relates to the internal auditor's position, because interestingly enough, apparently, many school districts have their internal auditors reporting directly to district employees, which is from an accounting and audit perspective is not optimal. So that's a little surprising, but in any case, we may have fewer to work with as it relates to the internal auditor, but that's okay. We'll whatever we can get. Okay.
And Mr. Wilson, I'd also
Yes.
mention that at least one district, that position was dual-hatted as internal auditor and inspector general. And that's an interesting function.
What's an inspector general?
An inspector general is someone who has authority to investigate
Oh,
things outside the normal chain. They're very, very common in the federal sector. You won't find a federal agency that does not have an inspector general, and their job is to stand outside the chain of command, as it will, and be an independent.
Well, do they do those perform those inspections for things other than financial?
I'm assuming so.
Okay.
I'm assuming that.
Because our
when
internal
they-
auditor could do
Yeah,
that.
because
for
an
financial
auditor,
matters.
yes, an internal auditor would be the function for inspecting financial concerns.
Right.
But this would be compliance concerns and things outside of that.
I see.
But I have not had a conversation with the district that had that particular model, but they forwarded us a copy of their contract and we'll look into it.
It's interesting. Any comments? Okay, so the next item on the agenda is review of the school board agenda this evening. We have Mariana. Can someone help me with the last name? Is it Villavon? Okay, we'll check. If somebody could check on that. We have some special recognitions. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve. Any questions about the 3 sets of minutes or comments? We have new administrator announcements. Any new administrator announcements, Madam Superintendent?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we have some new administrators. Oh, yes, I see. It's been added. All right, on the consent agenda, items C10 through C15. C16 through C20. Questions, comments? I think the next, because these are all cash donations. So are there any comments or questions about any of the cash donations, C21 through? This is awfully small print. C
84.
84. Thank you. There we go. C84. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to, if you saw that Andrew McCutcheon is making a $20,000 donation to Fort Meade High School, his high school, that's just a young man that's made it and really giving back to his community, has been. I'm just, Susan talked about trying to get letters to some of the people that make those extraordinary donations to let them know that the board really appreciates. And we did something right in educating that young man coming through, because he certainly is doing what we would like to see all of our students do. So I just wanted to be sure everybody saw that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Non-cash contributions, items C85 through C86. Facilities and operations, C87, C88. C89 through C91. Questions, comments? Other facilities items, C91 through C95.
I have a question on 95.
Yes, sir?
With the new version of Chrome, we're not able to access the add annotation or request additional information from staff, so that's why I'm bringing it up today, because with Chrome, you cannot ask staff questions like we used to, and I don't know how far we are in fixing that problem. But anyway, the Mulberry Senior Drainage Improvements. I know that we are looking to the future for Mulberry High School to be the next school after Bartow that gets rebuilt. Spending $288,000 on drainage improvements, is that something that's absolutely necessary or could be dealt with when we rebuild Mulberry High School or relocate it or whatever happens?
May I respond?
Yes, Angela.
Yes, we're looking at Marlboro Senior High because we know it is in some poor condition for a full modernization. But if that occurs, it'll be like sometime down the line, like 4 or 5 years. Right now, they're unable to use their football field because of irrigation. So we have to, in the meantime, repair the fields for the 288 until we can come up with 60 or 70 million to modernize that school. So in the interim, they do need their fields, and that's why we thought it was a priority to make sure we go ahead with this agenda item and improve the fields for them.
I bring that up because I have heard others in the community say that Mulberry High School's had money spent on it in terms of a auditorium, and because of that, we should not consider the relocation of the school. I think that's very short-sighted. I would hate for this improvement to be lumped into that same kind of explanation down the road, because I think you ought to look at all options on the table, rebuilding the school and relocating the school, whatever is the best option, rather than saying, well, just because we've spent money on X, then we ought to take off the table the option of relocating the school somewhere else in town.
Certainly, we'll do that. When we work on the plan, we'll look at the various options and the costs and where we have property and the difference in rebuilding or rebuilding new. So that's part of the planning process.
Thank you.
Ms. Sellers?
I'll say that they, the principal is continually looking at all alternatives for that school, even the possibility of staying there and looking at the land around them. But it's in the same situation Bartow High is in. We had to, 2-3 years ago, put some major work into putting a Band-Aid on Bartow High. And it's when you can't redo it the right, like you should, redo it completely. You have to start, unfortunately, putting Band-Aids on places that cost money, that when you finally get the money to redo, is sort of wasted. We had to redo the restrooms in an area that probably, when the full renovation, they'll be completely gutted and redone again.
But your
But-
sunk costs should not preclude you from thinking about
Oh.
a relocation. And I've heard people push back against a possible relocation because of the sunk cost that has already been incurred with the auditorium, and I think that's short-sighted.
I do too, and I think they're looking at all alternatives, whether there's land that can be used around the school, because when you look at it, you see the challenges and issues with Mulberry High School. And Mulberry High School, that area is going to grow, and that's very scary, because that school is truly where it is landlocked, unless there's some options right around there. So, I know, but I've watched our facilities department, usually when they come forward, it's something that's really needed, and I saw the same situation with Bartow, where you just hate to spend money putting on Band-Aids, but you can't, the situation is such that you have to do it for the benefit of our kids.
And I would have been glad to ask the question in advance, but our software won't allow you to do that anymore, with Chrome anyway, at least.
And that's true. I have to go to Explorer, and it's painfully slow. Internet Explorer.
Hopefully we'll get that corrected soon.
Thanks. Mr. Townsend?
The two things about that. One, field condition at Mulberry High was one of the things I heard back when we were doing the Bryant Stadium purchase, and some folks down there were like, "Hey, our fields are in rough shape." So I'm glad to hear that we're responsive to that within the framework of making sure we're doing what we need to do. Secondly, if rebuilding or relocating is the right call 4 or 5 years from now, and I'm still here, you can rely on me to push to support that. I'm not gonna, because somebody says, "Hey, you fixed their field 5 years ago, don't move the school." I don't think that's a thing that will be a determining factor. But appreciate you raising it, though. It's a good point.
Okay. Human resource items and support services field trips, C96 through C100. Comments, questions? So then we move to our regular agenda. And I will ask this again tonight at the board meeting, but is there anything on the consent agenda that anyone would like removed and added to the regular agenda? All right, the regular agenda items R101 through R104, 103, 101 through R103. Yes, ma'am.
Just want to publicly thank Ms. Usher for getting the project for Loftman Oaks Elementary on this agenda so that we can move forward. I know the projected date is still in January of 19, but with a little bit of hopes and prayers, maybe we'll be able to get that done sooner. But if not, but thank you for jumping through hoops and at least getting the project started officially by the board. So let's hope. I'm thinking early fall. But no sleepless nights or anything, okay? Appreciate your time and talent in trying to get this done, because it's so badly needed, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? And then we have some school board policy updates. Will someone be there to maybe give us a little background?
I think Wendy asked for if there was any questions. Did she ask the
Okay.
board members? Because she's still in Tallahassee.
Yeah, I mean, I could, the question I'm gonna have is just, where is the current technology strategic plan, and when do we see the next one? It's, I think, it's just a very formal question, no concern about the policy itself, it's more just that. And then, I guess also, thinking about it, for a while, we were kind of getting some updates on the status of some of the big internal system implementations we're doing. I think it's just important for the board periodically to continue to get those, just because
We met this week, I'll send those back out. Can I just answer?
Yes, ma'am.
I can tell you that they're in the revision process of the tech plan right now, and yes, that will be coming back in like March or April. Okay.
Okay. And we have the superintendent's report, the attorney's report, auditor's report, and board member reports. Any other comments or questions? Okay. So, Madam Superintendent, would you like to introduce the next item on the agenda, please?
Thank you. For the board members, because we have some guests here for time, I would like to flip item 6 to come first for discussion, which is going to be, I believe we have our auditors here. They're here? Okay, Mr.
Yes,
Colon.
Cherry
thank you.
Becker, Scott Anderson from Cherry Becker is here to report out, and Mr.
Okay.
Denbo, our accounting director, will be there for any questions regarding our annual financial results.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to introduce Scott Anderson from Cherry Becker. He was here about 11 months ago when we brought to you the 2016 audit. We're bringing back to you the 2017 audit. So obviously, we were able to get it done in a quicker fashion this year, which is always a good thing, and worked out very well. So we were working with Scott and his crew probably the last 6 months to pull data, exchange information, and happy to turn it over to Scott then to report out to you the 2017 audit results.
Thank you. I've passed out 2 deliverables. One is a letter, which is our required letter to those charged with governance. It contains all of those things that our professional standards require us to communicate to this board. I'm not going to go through that in great detail. It's there for you to read at your leisure, but it is fairly standard. And anything of note, I will cover in my presentation today. The second deliverable is just a colorful handout, just my talking points for my presentation today. As Dave mentioned, we did issue our report a month and a half earlier than the prior year. There's a lot of work that goes into putting together this CAFR, and so when we can do it a month and a half earlier, it means that your finance group put in a lot of work to get it done, and they should be committed for that. Within the financial statements, we issue 3 different reports. We are required to plan and perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. The purpose of an audit is to provide reasonable assurance that your financial statements are fairly stated. We do not provide absolute assurance. We do not test every transaction. We use some sampling techniques and analytical procedures to arrive at this level of reasonable assurance. That report is unmodified, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide. It means that we believe that a third-party user of your financial statements can rely upon the numbers that are in there. The second report that we also issued in your financial statements is in the back of your CAFR. It's a report in accordance with Yellow Book. Yellow Book are government auditing standards. And for those of you flipping through my presentation, I'm just on this very first slide. I'll spend most of my time on this slide actually, since it summarizes the results of the audit. That report does not express an opinion, rather it describes our scope of testing over internal controls and over compliance with laws, regulations, grants, and contracts. Nevertheless, if we do find any instances of non-compliance, we disclose that in the report. That report is clean. No instances of non-compliance or internal control deficiencies were disclosed. And then the third report that we issued also in the back of your financial statements is our report in accordance with uniform guidance. That is the requirements over auditing of your grants. That report, the purpose of it is to disclose any instances of non-compliance or internal controls related to grants. And that is also a clean report. We had no reportable instances of non-compliance or internal control disclosed in that report. We had no audit adjustments as a result of our audit. We did have two past audit adjustments. Past audit adjustments are those which we identified that are not significant enough to require you to record them in your financial statements. Typically, there's a materiality consideration there, and also timing depending on when it was found. The one related to an issue identified last year by your internal accounts auditor, where they made a last-minute adjustment. At that point, we were far enough along in the process that we did not record that in last year's financial statements. This year, it's the same difference, just the opposite direction as the books get caught up with each other. The second past audit adjustment had to do with some capital assets in the prior year, which were expensed rather than capitalized, and it was sufficiently immaterial that we posted that adjustment in the current year rather than going back and restating the prior year. Other matters, there were two significant GASBs. They were significant in the local government world, but had little impact on you this year. Just wanted to bring them up in case you had already been aware of them and were wondering the impact on your financial statements. GASB 74 is a standard that requires pension plans to make certain disclosures. I take that back, not pension plans, but other post-employment benefits. You may remember the last couple of years, GASB 67 and GASB 68, which required you to record your net pension liability on your books. GASB 74 is the same thing, only for other post-employment benefits. Did not have effect on you since your OPEB plan does not have assets in an irrevocable trust. That will apply next year when GASB 75 is effective, but that will require you to record your other post-employment benefit liabilities in accordance with that new standard. GASB 77 is a standard that, yes.
Just a question.
Yes.
Our pensions are managed by the state.
Your pensions are.
Yeah.
Your other post-employment benefits are not.
Yes.
Did I understand you to say that the pension costs were recorded on our books?
Yes. Your pension liability is a liability. It's your applicable share, your allocated share of
Even
that
though it's managed by
liability.
the state of Florida?
That's right. Right.
Okay.
So
That's interesting.
the state receives an audit for, they have a total liability, and then as part of their financial statements, they show each individual local government's allocated share of that liability, and that gets recorded on your books in accordance with that standard. We'll talk a little bit more about that liability in a second.
There's a pie chart that's interesting to see later.
The other standard, GASB 77, requires disclosure of tax abatement agreements. And that's tax abatement agreements, whether you entered into them or another local government entered into them, which affects your tax base or your tax revenue. And all that standard does is require those to be disclosed in the financial statements. And we did not find that to be, have a major impact on their financial statements. Looking at slide 2, we did some work over internal controls in order to help design our audit procedures. This slide is just a snapshot of the control cycles that we spent some time on. We're not required by our standards to actually test internal controls. However, we do test internal controls as part of our audit strategy, and we test them on a rotational basis. And so this year we tested cash receipts, we tested controls over procurement cards, and controls over the bid process. We also look at your journal entries. We utilize a data extraction software to identify unusual relationships in journal entry amounts and to determine if there's anything that needs to be looked at in closer detail. And then we also look at your information technology controls. And I've listed a few broad categories of what goes into that. But we have an internal audit group who specializes in IT audit, which is a growing field, becoming more and more important in all of our audits as everything becomes more digitized and more paperless. One item which they brought forward as a recommendation, which was also a recommendation from last year, which is to implement a policy to have a periodic review of your user access to your SAP applications. What that basically means is you've got certain employees who have access to do certain things in your financial statement software. As roles change, it's necessary to evaluate what access people have to make sure it's still appropriate. The best practice is to do a periodic review of that access. Periodic obviously is not defined. It was noted last year, noted again this year, since it didn't look like there was documentary evidence that had been done. I will say probably every year we'll increase the severity of that finding. Right now it's still just a recommendation, but it's something that doesn't happen just for best practice purposes.
I think we have a question. Excuse me, I think we have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know, without pinning you down on periodic, are we talking about quarterly, yearly, every 4 years? What is your ballpark?
It's not defined. I would say at least annually. That's my opinion. I'll tell you, our IT auditors raised it from last year. Last year they said just verbally communicate it to the IT staff. This year it's let's raise that up and communicate it to the board. Next year perhaps it will be in writing. So it's something, there's some urgency to it, but it's periodic's not defined, and I think that's on purpose. I think it depends on your system or your environment. Not everybody's the same.
But probably some intentional effort at least once a year, generally.
Documented. It may be happening, but it's not documented and not auditable. Slide 4 is just a summary of where we spent most of our time on the major audit areas, and I won't spend too much time on that. We use a risk-based approach, so not every audit area is really equal. We spend a certain amount of time in order to come up with this level of assurance that is reasonable. Slide 5 is a summary of our audit of your grants. There is a formula combined with a risk-based approach that determines what your major programs are for single audit purposes. This year, your major program is with the special education cluster, the improving teacher quality state grants, and the Head Start program. We follow the federally designated compliance supplement, which dictates what we should be looking at, suggested audit procedures and whatnot. It's a surface level review. It's not as in depth as what a actual monitoring agency would do if they came in and looked at it, but nevertheless it tends to be effective. We look at your administrative controls, monitoring reports, the compliance matrix, and then we do some specific compliance testing of specific invoices and charges to those grants. The next few slides are high-level analysis of your financial statements, just to give you kind of a snapshot of what it looks like relative to last year. your total revenues for your general fund. We isolated general fund since it's the primary operating fund of the financial statements. Total revenue increased by $19 million this year, 2.6%. And that's all related to the increases in the Florida Education Finance Program, so the allocation from the state. Slide 7 shows the same thing on the expense side, where you'll see expenses increased by about $26 million. Most of those expenses were in instructional services, and specifically in instructional services, very top line item, instruction, which is where all of your teacher costs are. Slide 8 is the fund balance for the general fund. It decreased by about $3 million. That's going to fluctuate from year to year. Nothing unusual about this. The major change would be with your restricted fund balance increasing by about $3 million related to the state required carryover. Tab 9. Slide 9 is a snapshot of your cash and investments at the governmental activities level, so in total. The slide just gives a great visual of the breakdown. You'll notice last year you had more than half of your cash and investments in actual cash and money markets, so easily liquid assets. This year, those resources were allocated to investments, to other investment items. Total cash and investments decreased by $13.6 million, which seems like a lot. That's 5.5%. It's a normal fluctuation based on operational needs and building activity. Tab 10 is your capital assets. There was a decrease this year of about $18 million. Now, there's a lot of activity within that one decrease. You'll notice, if you remember last year, your capital asset balance stayed relatively the same, but that included about $40 million in new spending on projects offset by depreciation. This year, there was not as many additions, but there's still about $26 million in money spent on capital projects this year, offset by about $43 million in depreciation. Slide 11 is the one we were alluding to before that gives you a look at your long-term liabilities. Specifically called the long-term liabilities and not long-term debt because a lot of this is your net pension liability. You'll notice with all of the other debt categories, your certificates of participation, your bonds payable, those amounts actually went down. Your payoff of those liabilities exceeded any new debt that was obtained this year. But in overall, long-term liabilities increased by $100 million, and that was due to your net pension liability. It's not a liability that you have a lot of control over. There's two pieces to it. You have the total pension liability, which is based on certain assumptions, trying to predict total amount that will be owed to employees who retired, discounting it back using an estimated discount rate, and then attributing that to service periods already achieved, already earned. The other side of that is your net pension liability is well funded. I think the last statistic I saw was in Florida, it's about 90% funded. We have to predict how much of those assets set aside, how much those will be when it comes time to actually pay it. So there's a discount rate or a rate of return that's also estimated. And so there's lots of estimates in there. It's going to cause this liability to fluctuate greatly. So you'll see without any decision made by this board, by simply the economic conditions, by the rate that was used by the state when estimating the liability increased by $140 million this year. You can see that decrease next year. You can see it go in many different directions based on certain assumptions that are. Now, this is not a liability that you will pay out tomorrow. You're only paying out when employees retire and that they're receiving benefits. But it's a liability that's required to be on the books according to GASB 68.
So So a portion of this liability is funds we actually pay out to employees when they leave, and a portion of it is simply the state's assigned piece of pensions to us.
And they take your census data, they take the number of employees that you have, so it's applied to real data from the district.
Yeah, no,
to come up
I don't
with your
doubt that, but
allocation.
could it affect our credit rating?
No.
Okay.
Now, and so this is not a new standard, this came out, I think last year, or maybe
2 years ago.
2 years ago was the first time, and that was the main question leading up to it, and our firm actually spoke with several credit agencies, and their response is, we already knew this liability existed, whether it was on your balance sheet or not, and so they kind of have their own way of already accounting for it, so it's not supposed to affect it.
Was my statement correct, though, that some of the cost is borne by the district, but the main pension portion is borne by the state? Does the district have some, like for unpaid
Are we writing a check?
holidays and things like that? Do we pay for unpaid holidays and things, or unpaid,
And all this liability comes from the state,
Okay.
from the state report.
okay,
The state provides us their audit report, and they give you a list of how much should be allocated to you.
okay.
That's where this liability comes in. Now, you are paying real dollars during the year, and that feeds into your pension expense,
Right.
but it's not included as part of this. I mean, it is, but we don't have any, we don't provide that input to them. It's already being considered with their assumptions, if that makes sense.
Okay. Ms. Sellers?
No, I,
Okay. I
So-
thought you had a
interesting.
question.
So hold on, because OPEB is next year, right? So we're gonna do the same thing with your other post-employment benefits. Now, one thing about OPEB, it's not funded, right? If it was funded, it would be applicable this year, because to be funded means you have assets set aside in the irrevocable trust. You can offset those assets with a liability. Next year, you won't be able to offset whatever the liability is with any assets, because they're not set aside in an irrevocable trust. So, you'll see some numbers next year. You already have kind of an OPEB liability, but the standard is completely changing, and I expect it'll go up. That's a lot to chew on, but I'm available for questions later if you guys think of them. The last slide is just a summary. In summary, we were able to complete the audit earlier last year. We had full cooperation of management. Everything we asked to see, every person we asked to speak to was made readily available to us. We had no findings during internal controls. There were no reportable instances, and you're about to ask me a question.
Yeah. I mean, where did those pronouncements come from? Were they applied to all states or just our
All
state?
local governments, everybody who conforms with GASB.
Okay. Well, just a comment, and just like to commend Mr. Perone and his team for another exceptional audit. And I know Mrs. Cunningham had some comments.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Mr. Anderson for his presentation, not only today, but he also spoke to the district's audit committee this morning, Audit and Finance Committee. And it was interesting, at the end of the presentation, one of our community members said, well, having served on this audit committee now for a number of years, I forget exactly how he phrased it, but he said, I really want to commend your district for how well you're doing. He said, because through the years, it seems like we're getting better and better with each of these audits. And so the committee was thrilled this morning to receive this information. So I just wanted to pass that along to the board as your liaison to that district committee. So thank you, sir, for your presentation and your time.
Any other comments? Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. It's good to know that our community sees this happening, because as you and I both know, it
No.
wasn't always that great.
It wasn't.
Any other thoughts or comments? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Good.
Okay, our next and last item for discussion this evening is going to be collective bargaining agreement. Ms. Porteous. Yes.
Hello.
recently, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Recently, the Polk Education Association provided us with details regarding their ratification vote of the ESP and Secretary group. 86% of them voted, and 99% agreed to ratification. Of the para group, 72% voted, and 98% agreed to ratification. And of the teacher group, 56% voted, and 98% agreed to ratification of that as well. In terms of particulars and specifics, you all know the history. We've been negotiating with PEA since May of 2016, so it's been a long negotiation season. However, thankfully, this vote that you'll take tonight will end that negotiation season, and we can begin, hopefully, to have better relations for 18-19. And Mary Ann will agree with me on that statement. And so will Larry as well. Good, what'd you say? I was just Mary Ann and Larry both will agree. I did say Larry for the record. So, just some basics and particulars. The tentative agreement does not affect the salary for first-year teachers. Salary was a big contention, so that will remain at $40,672, and that is unchanged since 15-16. Specifically, our most experienced teachers, and those are the ones that are on a continuing contract, will receive, they will have a new base salary actually of $61,970 for the 17-18, and that's an increase from $61,072 from 15-16. Now let's kind of get to the details of it. So specifically for the 16-17 school year, total for benefits and salary increases, we've come to an agreement of $6,980,008 in increases. That's the total cost for all three PEA groups. For the grandfathered new teachers, for the grandfathered salary schedule, it's $2,400,000. For the teacher performance salary schedule, that's $3,300,000. And for the paras, it's $718,000, and for the ESPs or secretaries, that is $400,000. So again, that's a total of $6,980,000. For the 17-18 salary schedules, grandfathered teachers, again, $812,000. Performance teachers, it's $1.2 million. For para educators, it's $534,000, and for ESP, it's $291,000, for a total of $2.9 million, inclusive of benefits. So for 16-17 and for 17-18, the grand total is $9.9 million in salary increases. Specifically, for the 16-17 contract year, this will be paid retro to January 1, 2017 with no salary advancements. And this is for the grandfathered teachers. They will receive $599, and then the network managers will receive $599. Occupational and physical therapists, also $599, and then school psychologists will receive $988. For 16-17, again, for the teacher performance salary schedule, this will be retro to January 1, 2017. Highly effective personnel will receive $900. Effective personnel will receive $600. And in terms of salary steps, that's 3 salary steps and 2 salary steps respectively. Developing or not evaluated teachers are evaluated as effective or treated as effective, and they will receive $600, and that's an advancement of 2 salary steps. 2 salary levels. And then less than effective will receive no salary increases pursuant to Florida Statute 1012.22. For 16-17 as well, for school psychologists that are on the teacher performance pay scale, highly effective will receive $993, effective will receive $662, developing and not evaluated are treated as effective, and they will receive $662. And less than effective will not receive any funds pursuant to 1012.22 Florida statutes. Now for 17-18, Again, we're gonna break it out into grandfather and performance pay. So for the grandfather teachers for 17-18, their pay will be retro to July 1, 2017. That amount is for continuing and professional services contract, $299, network managers, $299, occupational and physical therapists, $299. School psychologists that are on this continuing and or professional service contract will receive $328 for 2017-18. And again, that's retro to July 1, 2017. For the annual teachers, annual teachers on the teacher performance salary schedule, they are broken down into the levels. Highly effective will receive $600, effective will receive $300, developing or not evaluated will receive $600, and less than effective will not receive anything pursuant to Florida statutes 1012.22. For 17-18, that is retro to July 1, 2017. And school psychologists will receive $622. Effective, for highly effective. Effective will receive $331. Developing or not evaluated will receive an effective rate of $331. And again, less than effective will not receive anything. Other issues that you will vote on today include Article to the PEA teacher contract, the instructional contract, include Article 3, the school calendar, Article 6, teaching conditions, Article 4, professional qualifications and assignments, Article 14, professional qualifications and assignments, Article 17, transfers and changes and assignments, Article 15, instructional personnel evaluation, specifically that manual was removed from that article or from the appendix. Article 17, transfer and changes and assignments, Article 19, layoff provisions, Article 20, paid leaves, Article 23, insurance, specifically the removal of the health plan benefit schedule, Article 27, experimental programs, Article 33, contract terms, and Appendix D, the supplemental salary schedule. To the para-educator CBA, you all will vote on the Appendix D, 2016-17 salary schedules that we just discussed, the salary outliers, Article 6.1, paid leaves of absence, Article 8.4, working hours, Article 14, removal of the health plan, schedule of benefits, and Article 20, the term of the agreement as well. Last, for the ESP, or clerical CBA, you'll vote on Appendix B, 2016-17 salary schedules, the salary outliers as discussed in 2.1-1, also Article 10, paid leaves of absence, Article 12, employee benefits, and then the term of the contract as well.
Any questions? Ms. Sellers?
How many teachers are on the grandfather schedule versus?
It's a little less than half. I want to say, do you remember, Mike, 2003?
Yeah, it was,
Is it
I wanna say
document?
the percentage was
Yeah,
65, 40,
35.
65, 35, so 35% of 6,500.
Okay, it's 35% of our teachers are on the grandfather, and about 65% are on the.
Yes. I thought it was like 2,800 for some reason.
A little over.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Okay. Mr. Chair, those are the two items we have for discussion. The other items that are listed there for business services were informational items, which I don't believe staff received any questions regarding those, and those are just some of our normal standing items.
Okay.
That concludes my session.
Any questions on the informational items? And I understand we do have someone coming to the discipline meeting, is that correct?
We don't have parents, but we have a case with McKeel, and I believe they will be there to represent. I didn't see any with parents as of yet.
Okay, and that meeting convenes at 4?
At 4.
Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.